All right, Stout-Hearted 7, Chapter 7. Stout-Hearted 7, Chapter 7. Here we go. People said Mama was wonderful, the way she took hold, but soon anyone could see the Saggers were in trouble. Mama was not strong enough to drive. The doctor was not good at it. Frank was too small and light, and John had to take his turn herding the cattle column. Mama said she would have to hire a man who knew how to handle oxen. That very day, a young man came along on horseback, said he had heard she needed help, and asked for the job. Catherine guessed Dr. Dagan was hurt when he had to give up his place, but he said nothing. For a day or two, everything went better. There had been so many delays for this section of the wagon train that they were again running low on food. When they came to a small trading post called Fort Bridger and found a stream swarming with fish, the company stopped a day. The men used wagon sheets for nets and hauled in great catches of fish that they split and smoked as they had smoked the buffalo meat earlier. This time, they reminded one another they would not be wasteful. The new driver told Mama that if she let him take Papa's gun, he would go get a deer. Venison would be a good change from fish. So without consulting John or the doctor, Mama let him have the gun. That was the last they ever saw of the man. Rude. He took the gun and left. He stole it and then left. When she realized he was not coming back, Mama was so discouraged that she seemed to lose heart. Dr. Dagan, I know I shouldn't ask it, but will you drive again? Ah, yeah, that I will. So good as I can. I have made up my mind that when we get to Fort Hall, I'll trade our wagon and stock for horses. We'll go the rest of the way on horseback, as other travelers have done. When we get to the Whitman Mission, we'll stay there all winter. But Ma, John protested, it's 500 miles from Fort Hall to the Mission. You can't ride horseback that far. I'll have to try. The jolting of this wagon is killing me. All I want is to get to Dr. Whitman's place as soon as possible. You said you hated him, Elizabeth reminded her. Mama sighed. I should not have said that. Though, if it had not been for him, perhaps your dear father would not have decided to take this journey. I don't know. Whatever I said, Dr. Whitman is our only hope. Once there, perhaps I'll get well. The travelers continued on through the Rocky Mountains. Days were hot, but nights and mornings bitterly cold. Mama insisted that Dr. Dagan and the boys take more of the blankets. She and the girls huddled closer together next to Catherine. A dozen times a night, Catherine heard her crawling around, pulling up blankets and quilts. Sometimes she reached out to squeeze Mama's hand to let her know how brave she was. Stout-hearted, Papa had called her, but even the stoutest heart failed sometimes. Mama began to cough the way Papa had done. Catherine felt chills race up her own back. Unspoken prayers rose from her heart. She could sit up now if there was a comfortable place for her, but Dr. Dagan said it would be better for her to stay flat with her leg in the padded box while the wagon was moving. In the evening, he carried her out to a chair beside the fire. Elizabeth helped wash and comb her hair. Mama said she was a real helper with the younger ones, too. On the first day of September, they reached Fort Hall, a strong fort with high walls of logs and blockhouses at diagonal corners. Indians camped outside in teepees. Some of the travelers wanted to stop here for a rest, but Captain Shaw said they must not waste even one day. By this date, they should have reached the Whitman Mission, 500 difficult miles still left ahead. Mama said nothing about changing to horses. She was too sick to think of anything. As they pulled out of Fort Hall, everyone knew they were coming to the most dangerous part of the journey. The trail followed the Snake River. They could see the water for which they longed, but the stream was so deep down in its canyon that no one could get to it. What water they had must be carried from one small creek to another. The dust was so terrible for Mama that Dr. Daggin hung a sheet at the front, closing the peephole. It kept out a little of the dust, but inside the wagon, the air was suffocating. Matilda and Louise made so much fuss that the doctor let them ride up with him, Elizabeth beside them to keep them from falling, while Catherine lay alone with Mama holding her hand. It was all she could do for her. At last, Mama became so weak that she could no longer nurse the baby. So nursing the baby would be to feed the baby. So back in those days, they couldn't go to the store and get a bottle or formula. So the moms would nurse their babies exclusively. And Mama now has become so weak that the baby doesn't have any food. Dr. Daggin went from wagon to wagon, begging women who had babies to give Rosanna a little of their milk when their own babies did not need all of it. She was passed from one to another, each taking a turn. Catherine thought of her every day, but she seldom saw her. So other women who had babies would take turns feeding her, and baby Rosanna was just getting passed from one mom to another mom to another mom. And Catherine never got to see her because she was always with someone trying to get enough milk for her to survive. One or other of the kindly neighbors came in every morning and night to wash Mama's face and hands and try to make her more comfortable. Sometimes they brought food for the family, a piece of boiled meat or a Johnny cake baked in a skillet. Otherwise, they ate jerky and mush cooked by the doctor or the boys. Mama could eat nothing. No longer was there singing and dancing in the camp at night. Everyone was too tired. Life had become a battle of grim endurance against time, weather, and weakness. One day, Mama roused enough to ask Elizabeth to bring in the rest of the children so she could see them once more. She reached a thin hand to each one. John, Frank, promise me you will look after your sisters and try to keep the family together. Catherine saw the boys wink back tears. Yes, Mama, we will. Be kind to them, Mama murmured and closed her eyes. Louise wanted to stay with Mama, but John took her away. Frank lifted Matilda out and gave a hand to Elizabeth. Around the wagon, everything became very quiet. Catherine heard the boys set up the tent. She closed her eyes when the doctor and John carried Mama from her bed. A few minutes later, she felt a hand touch her. Did your mother have a nice light-colored dress? A tearful voice asked. Yes, a real pretty one, but I don't know where it is. Elizabeth climbed in and helped hunt for it, but everything was in such a tangle they could not find it. They would have to bury Mama in a dark blue calico that needed washing. Mama just passed away. The doctor lifted Catherine out so that she could watch him and the boys prepare the grave. In this place called Pilgrim Springs, there was no tree large enough to make a coffin like Papa's. They laid willow brush in the bottom of the grave, wrapped Mama's body in a sheet, and lowered it, and then spread more brush over it before they filled the grave. It seemed a terrible way for a brave life to end. John cut a piece of board to place at the head of the grave and lettered Mama's name in it with a charred stick. Naomi Carney Sager, age 27. Papa was 38, Catherine remembered. They died only 26 days apart. That night, Catherine overheard some of the men talking with Captain Shaw and Dr. Dagan about her brothers, and her sisters. One suggested that they be divided among the other members of the train. Almost any family could take one more child. Captain Shaw said no. He had promised Henry Sager to see his family through to the Whitman mission. Nobody was going to break up that family while he had anything to say about it. When Catherine had a chance, she told John what she had heard. He seemed to have grown taller in the last few days. His face was thin, and he looked like a man, not a boy. He took both her hands in his. Frank and I promised Mama to take care of you and the girls and to keep us all together, and I'm going to do it. Captain Shaw told the boys to bring their wagon up next to his so that he and Aunt Sally could help look after the little ones. Aunt Sally put her arms around Matilda and Louise. As long as Uncle Billy and I have a loaf of bread, you won't go hungry. Not only the Shaws took on the responsibility of the Sager family. Everyone in the wagon train offered help. Never were children more tenderly cared for, considering the destitute condition in which everyone was living. The children rarely saw their baby sister, but Aunt Sally told them that she was still alive. Mrs. Perkins has her today. Tomorrow is Mrs. Edna's turn. They are doing the best they can for her. The day came when Dr. Dagan removed the splints from Catherine's leg, which looked thin and shrunken, but was as straight as the other. Your papa did a good job, he said. Now, when they camped, Catherine could hobble around a bit, leaning on a forked, padded stick that made into a crutch. John acted like a father, making Matilda and Louise mind even better than Papa had done. None of the children could speak of their parents, but somehow life began to pick up again. Everyone, including Captain Shaw, was becoming anxious over the delays they had suffered. Other companies had gone ahead and must already had arrived at the Whitman mission or gone down the Columbia River to the Willamette Valley. The Shaw party still had to cross the Snake River and the much-feared Blue Mountains. One morning, Catherine saw Dr. Dagan and Captain Shaw studying the Sager's oxen. One had died. The others were very weak. If we cut down the wagon the way some of the others are going to do, they might be able to pull it over the mountains, the captain said. Dr. Whitman had to do the same with his wagon the first time he came across. Must have been just about here where he did it. So let me talk about what they're talking about. They're talking about this whole wagon is really long and heavy. It has all the stuff in it. So the oxen are getting too weak to carry or to pull the wagon. So what they're talking about doing is cutting the wagon and leaving half of it on the side of the road and just having the oxen pull this small front part. But what that means is they don't have much space. If they leave half the wagon, they lose all this space for sleeping and food and their supplies. So they're going to have to leave some of their precious supplies on the side of the road, but they're talking about cutting the wagon and making it easier for the oxen because they don't think the oxen are going to have enough strength to pull this heavy wagon. All right. The cavalcade had stopped for a day, and everywhere one heard the sounds of hammer and saw. Catherine wanted to cry when she saw the men cut off the back half of their lovely big wagon, of which Papa had been so proud. What will we do with all of our things? She asked Aunt Sally. We'll have to leave behind everything you do not absolutely need. I know it hurts, but that is what we have to do if we are to get you children across the mountains. Mama's cherry wood chest? Aunt Sally nodded. Her rag carpet and new dishes? Life is more important than these things, dearie. If your mama were here, she would be brave enough to do what has to be done. You must do the same. Catherine helped as much as she could, sitting near the pile of things the doctor took out of the wagon. She emptied the chest of the remaining clothes, sheets, and tablecloths that Aunt Sally said they needed to keep. She and Elizabeth watched the boys set the empty chest beside the road, then the lovely rag carpet and the barrel of dishes. They cried together, remembering how hard Mama had worked to get the money for the dishes and how she had spent all winter weaving the beautiful carpet. Aunt Sally rescued their Bible, saying, "You better keep this. It has your names and ages written in it." Catherine lay the doctor book beside it. "We might need this someday, too." The wagon had now become a two-wheeled cart. The doctor said they might need the other two wheels before they got through the mountains, so he and the boys lashed them to the cart, one on each side. "All right, here we go," he said briskly. Catherine knew he felt as bad as the rest of them, but was trying to keep up their spirits. She blinked back her tears and with his help climbed up the cart. Elizabeth came next, and the doctor lifted in Matilda and Louise. Last of all, he climbed in himself, but he was too heavy. The front of the cart tipped, and the back went down. Doctor, girls, blankets, bedding, and everything else slid to the ground in a pile. John and Frank took time to see that no one was hurt. Then they burst into laughter. One by one, the girls scrambled out, and they too laughed at the doctor's sheepish look. It seemed good to laugh again. So they cut the wagon. Now they only have two wheels. So now it's kind of like a teeter-totter. So he loaded the kids in, and then he tried to get in. But when Dr. Dagan got in, it was so heavy that it tipped it all forward, or tipped it, I think forward it said, and everything came falling out of the wagon. So it was funny, but that's going to cause a problem because that means that Dr. Dagan or the kids are going to have to walk the entire way because they all can't be in the wagon at the same time. So, Chapter 7, my friends. Chapter 6, Papa dies. Chapter 7, Mama dies. Remember, this is a true story. These are real people that lived. Catherine and her siblings are real people, and they lived, and this was their life. So I will post this video, and then tomorrow I will help you with the Chapter 7 worksheet. See if you can answer it by yourself. It's true, false. And then tomorrow I'll give you the answers. All right, my friends. Talk to you soon. Bye.